On September 13th, 2013, I posted the first video in my Silent Hill Symbolism series. It was early on in my first years of college, and I was high on higher learning, eager to stretch my chops when it came to analyzing media myself. Suffice to say, I was quite new to it and had fewer resources at hand, which is why the quality was obviously low. Many of you have commented and complained about this, rightfully so. And now, here we are 5 years later, revisiting and revamping those original episodes. I plan to go back and redo each one, in order, starting with the first, Angela Orosco. This is not just a rehash of the same info, it's an updated exploration of the character, her background, and her role in Silent Hill 2. The second game in the Silent Hill series is masterfully designed. The story, its metaphors, and its symbols are so well structured that sometimes I just have to sit back in awe and admire it. The whole tale is centered on our protagonist, James Sunderland, who's foiled by both the Duder protagonists, Eddie and Angela. He meets the characters at various points in their downward spirals, and depending on player choice, he may well mirror one or the other down their dark path. They represent different aspects of James, different paths he might choose. Angela is a 19-year-old woman who carries the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her dialogue, behavior, and body language tell a tragic tale. She's introverted, anxious, fidgety, and apologetic for things that aren't her fault. She wears clothing that covers her entire body, with blood-red pants and a white shirt, which can represent innocence in some cultures and death in Japanese culture. The main Silent Hill 2 trio are all victims of abuse, but how they react to that abuse is different. Eddie becomes violent, expressing his pain outward at others. Angela is the opposite, internalizing her pain and violence towards herself. In this way, we see two of the ways in which abuse twists people and changes them, and both Angela and Eddie are meant to be cautionary tales for James. We first meet Angela in the graveyard. She's anxious, hovering near a gravesite before she's taken by surprise by James. She was so deep in thought she didn't notice him and apologizes for being scared. She warns him about the town and grows defensive when she believes he thinks she's lying. Her behavior here shows us she's troubled, anxious, full of self-doubt, and has experience with being hurt and discounted by others. It's likely she's spoken out about her abuse and been told she was lying, that she has often been blamed for the actions of others. Unlike James, Angela does not immediately head into town. She lingers in the graveyard, an uncomfortable place for most people. But unlike most people, Angela is not made uncomfortable by death. She craves it, and this is the first sign of that. The location associates her with the subject, and her desire to remain reinforces it. And this is another sign of her nerves and indecisiveness. In the graveyard scene, Angela is nervous, but mostly normal. Our second encounter is anything but. She's a changed person in the mirror room. Her stutter and nerves are gone. She suddenly is armed with a bloody knife she can't stop staring at. She no longer fidgets or seems anxious. She lays in front of a full-length mirror and does not immediately turn to face James. Her behavior towards him is no longer that of a deferential and scared young woman, but of a forceful and confident one. The room they are in is behind a white door, another association with the color of death, which stands next to a pitch-black door, boarded up, seemingly burnt, with a ruined teddy bear by the floor. It's a clear symbol for the subconscious, where Angela has undoubtedly internalized her pain and suffering, a sign that her childhood is a horrifying place, and that she's locked those memories away, repressing them like James has. There's a photo on the floor of this room, a family photo of Angela, her brother, father, and mother. The photo is torn in half, with mother and daughter on one side, son and father upside down on the other. Clearly, it represents Angela's broken childhood and her own anger at her family. Yet she and mother are together right side up. Later she'll mention that her mother said horrible things, like that she deserved her abuse, so clearly Mother was involved in some of her suffering. But this also seems to imply that the mother was abused as well, with the two girls together on one side, the boys on the other. In the novelization, it's revealed that both father and son abused and raped Angela, and that Angela killed them both. The divide between the abusers and the abused likely implies that Angela's mother was a victim, and in some way more sympathetic to Angela, which is likely why that's the person Angela believes she's coming to look for when she first arrives in town. All three characters start the story lying to themselves, repressing the truth. We are seeing their false faces, which is why we first see James in a mirror in that first scene of the game. Here, once again, we see James's false face in a mirror, but for most of the scene, we actually see Angela's body. She's being truthful here, speaking of her crime and her desire to die. That's why she's no longer anxious or afraid. But by the end of the scene, James has talked her down and she grows confused and afraid again. She becomes nervous like she was in the graveyard and abandons the knife to James. It will take her time to fully accept the truth. Interesting enough, it is only now that Pyramid Head will start carrying a great knife of his own, once James has this knife. It's also in this apartment building that we face the coin riddle. Silent Hill 2 is full of threes. 3 main characters, 3 pieces to many of the puzzles. The coin riddle includes 3 coins, which are called the Old Man, the Snake, and the Prisoner. The Prisoner coin depicts a woman with a downturned face and a blindfold, with flowers on the other side. This is the coin found in the mirror room after the conversation with Angela, and it's the coin that's associated with her. The 3 coins are an allusion in part to the story of the original sin from many major religions, the story of Adam, Eve, and the serpent. The original story depicts Eve as the first sinner, one to blame for the fall of man. But the coin puzzle has a different spin on it. The female coin is the prisoner, implying she has no control or authority in the situation. A woman wearing a blindfold is a symbol often used to depict the personification of justice, Lady Justice, a woman wearing a blindfold holding a set of scales. The blindfold is a literal representation of the idiom justice is blind, i.e., that it is impartial. The figure comes from the ancient Roman personification of justice called Justitia, who herself came from the Greek Themis, personification of law. The coins themselves are in the style of ancient Roman coins, and the lettering on the edges is Greek. The correlation here could be that Angela herself is justice, that killing her father and brother was deserved. It could also be that she is blind, unable to see she was undeserving of their treatment. The next time we see Angela is in the Piston Room, where James fights a boss called Abstract Daddy, a figure bent over another figure on a bed-like shape with grotesque lips. Angela is heard screaming and begging her father not to hurt her, while on the wall, pistons move back and forth in round holes. The meaning is obvious. Afterwards, Angela is clearly upset and far more emotional with James, breaking into tears and falling to the ground after accusing him of being like every other man, wanting only one thing. The camera moves and shows her in twisted directions. She isn't thinking clearly because she's terribly traumatized and associates James with her father and experiences with him. Here, she says the truth, that James killed his wife. Whether the reason is selfish, like she says, or not, depends entirely on the player's actions. This is her breaking point, and when we see her next, we'll see that she's accepted her past, recognized her crime, and has come to a decision. Around this area, there's another puzzle with 3 parts, the tablet puzzle. The piece which represents Angela here is called the Seductress. It's a red tablet with the image of an Aztec goddess on it, named Mayajuel, a fertility goddess who is associated with a very important plant to the Aztecs called Magui. Mahajuel is attributed as the one who created the plant, that it sprouted out of her bones after she was murdered by her own grandmother. The plant is spiny and dangerous, and was used by priests in performing ritual suicide, death by bloodletting. The plant can also be used to make alcohol. The association with inebriation, suicide, and familial murder are all very telling. The tablet itself is found in a shower stall, a place that is often the location of sexual assault, and is a place where victims attempt to find solace through cleaning themselves after. The last time we see Angela is in the scene in the hotel on the fiery staircase. In my first video, I summarized Angela's time in Silent Hill as her coming to terms with her past, and the town bringing her to a place where she could escape the hell that is her life, and enter heaven, the afterlife, at the top of the stairs. Some of you weren't convinced, but I'm even more convinced now than I was then. One of the film inspirations for the Silent Hill series was a film called Jacob's Ladder. After returning home from war, the protagonist begins to suffer strange breakdowns, is unable to tell truth from lie or past from present. In an end scene where Jacob returns home, he finally breaks down and remembers the truth of what happened to him in Vietnam. In a dream, he sees his son standing in their home in the U.S., taking his hand, and ascends a staircase towards a bright light. In reality, he dies in Vietnam and never makes it home. But the scene is clearly meant to depict that the hero had escaped the hell of the war and entered heaven by climbing the stairs in his dream. It's far too similar to Angela's situation to ignore. Her life has been hell. For her, she says, it's always like this, referring to the fire and the bloody skins on the wall. It's clear she's had an awful life full of pain, but now she is at the point that she can escape it by ascending the stairs and finding peace. That is why, when she finally realizes the truth, she asks James for her knife back. But James, not yet sure of his own truth, is unsure of what is right. He doesn't give her the knife. James's journey is about him coming to terms with his wife's death and his role in it. He must accept his guilt, and depending on his actions, he either finds peace, continues the cycle of tragedy, or ends his life. Angela has a similar journey, but her story isn't about accepting the guilt of her father and presumably brother's murders. In fact, the game implies multiple times that they deserved what happened, depicting Angela as justice on the coin, making the abstract daddy a monster, a boss that James defeats and Angela then abuses. It's clear the game believes they were guilty, and Silent Hill is known to kill the guilty. What Angela is trying to come to terms with is her abuse. How can she accept what she's been brought up to believe her whole life, that she deserved what happened? She can't accept it, but it's what appears to be true because of her experiences. It's what she's been abused and conditioned to believe. The truth that she comes to accept is that she is guilty of being deserving of abuse. Unable to live with that, she decides to kill herself. Angela is too traumatized to adapt to a normal life. Her only hope is peace, and Silent Hill calls her in order to give her that peace in death. Silent Hill 2 is the story of abuse, how it mutates, how it transforms people into monsters, into victims, into both, how it damages the people it touches like a poison. Angela is arguably the most damaged of the Silent Hill 2 cast. She cannot be helped and cannot be saved. Whether the player chooses to act in a way that redeems James or damns him, Angela's fate is the same. We are present solely to watch, to pay vigil to her last days and her inevitable death. She is the fallen angel, the victim who deserved none of her suffering, and after so long, finally finds solace in Silent Hill. Did you like the video you just watched? Then please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't already. If you want to see more content from me, you can follow me on Twitter or check out my Twitch channel. If you really liked what you saw, you could consider sending me some support through Patreon. Any pledge over $5 will get you a free video request of anything of your choosing. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.